Hey, good morning. Welcome back to Strong Tower Church. My name is Travis. I am lucky to be one of the pastors here at Strong Tower Church, and lucky to be in this incredible season that we're in. I want to share just a few things with you before I kind of get into the message today. Just kind of update you. At the beginning of this year, and really in the fall of last year, we kind of talked about all these kind of updates and facility improvements that we really wanted to make, and a lot of that stuff is kind of in progress. Some of that stuff is finished, but I just wanted to kind of share with you some of the progress that we've made on that. One of the things that we wanted to do is we wanted to put a new face on our Lafayette campus. I don't know if many of you have been out to our Lafayette campus or whatever, but it looked like this. And that was after us adding a little bit of paint to it and different stuff. But we said, you know what? We're not grabbing anybody's attention. And so we put a whole new face on it. We put a new sign on it. And here's what it looks like now. And they even have one where it's lit up at night. We have one of those signs coming here, if I can get the sign guy to show up. But it's supposed to be on its way. It's supposed to be here by Easter, but you know, that's how it goes sometimes. A few other things that we did, of course, we painted this building, painted the outside of this building. We added our silo gazebo outside. We wanting to do like more fellowship events and have things going on outside. Of course, fireworks show tonight. We're going to try everything in our power to make that happen because it is always a great time for us. If it storms, there is a big tree right over here next to 3 propane tanks. We will get under it and we will be fine. No worries, right? And so those are a few things that we've done. And then I think one of the big things that we talked about doing is we're like theming out our Kid Strong experience. And so we're in the middle of that. It's going to be Camp Kid Strong when they get done with it. And so they're working on our RV and they're working on our cabin and our big tree entrance and all this type of stuff. So they're in the middle of that. So it's going to look really good. I'm hoping that's going to be done around September. But everything takes a little longer these days, but we're hoping by September, all of that will be ready. And so we're super, super excited about a few of these things. And let me tell you, here's what's really cool. So back in the fall, I went to the board and we presented we do our normal budget meeting and we presented these thoughts of, hey, these are some of the things that we think we can do to improve our facilities, that we can continue to do a better job of reaching our community. We talk about all the time, we want to reach 1,000 people. And we said, hey, here's what we think we should do. And then I had kind of a breakdown, an estimate. Here's what I think it's going to cost. I said, I think it's going to cost somewhere between $250,000 to $300,000. That's just realistic. That's what it's going to cost. We have some money on hand that we had saved up through last year and through the previous years. But I said, you know what? More than likely, we're going to need to borrow $150,000. And I'll tell you, all these men on our board, all these elders, and some of them, you guys think I'm cheap. Them cheaper than me, a lot cheaper than me. And every one of them said, you know what? If that's what you guys think it's going to take to reach more and more people, let's go, let's do it. And so that's incredible in itself. Now, I said we were going to have to borrow $150,000. So I didn't know when that would happen. I have all the loan prepared. I had all that in the works. All I had to do was call them and say, okay, put the money in our bank. January, February, didn't need the money. I thought probably at March, we'll start having to make some big payments. March come around, didn't need the money. April, May, didn't need the money. June, haven't needed the money. You know what? We're not going to need the money because of how you all have stepped up and have become so generous. Man, we're going to cash flow all of that. It is incredible. It is really, really incredible. Can I mention we were coming out of a pandemic and yet all this is going on. And then you've heard us talk about, and I just want to put it in perspective because if you have kind of new, you maybe only been attending the last 6 months or year, and we've talked about how amazing this year has been and how God has been showing up. So I went back and looked at numbers and just on salvations and baptisms. And the previous 2 years, in 2020 and 2019, we had like 46 baptisms and like 75 salvations. This year, in 6 months, half of the year, we have 62 salvations and 52 baptisms, counting the ones today. we talk about and we say that we're in revival because we are. It has been an incredible 2021, incredible, and we can't wait to see what God is going to do. And I would say this, and then I'm going to get into my message, but I would say this: if you call Strong Tower Church your home, one of these ways that you can kind of step up and get involved is you can start serving. It's a great way that we can continue to reach more and more people. We need more and more volunteers. We need people who are serving in guest services, serving in our kids ministry, serving in our media ministry, serving all around. And so if you call Strong Tower Church your home, but you are not serving yet, I want that to change today. You can go head out to our Welcome Center. You can pick up an application there, or actually there's a bulletin, I think maybe in the seat in front of you. You can pick up that bulletin, put your name, contact information, and we will contact you this week to talk about how you can get involved in all that God is doing in this place. All right, that's what I wanted to celebrate. Everybody good? All right. Now, for the message today, like I said, I've been lucky enough to work here for the past 10 years, but before working here, I worked actually at this place called Orca USA. It's in Millersville, Tennessee. Anybody ever heard of it? No, nobody, right? That's what I thought. And that's by design. They don't want you to know about it. Millersville is kind of on the other side of White House, but what they do is they sell explosives. They sell dynamite. And they store thousands of pounds of dynamite in the hills of Millersville. You guys didn't know this. I worked in the office there. I actually delivered dynamite. I've actually gotten the pleasure of hitting like the plunger thing that sets the dynamite off. That's what I was doing before they called me up to work here. But I go in there to start working. And I had always worked, I had two previous jobs before then. I'd always worked in kind of an office environment, generally with women, older women. And I go into Orca USA, and I'm working out of a single wide trailer with a bunch of redneck men who love explosives. Completely different culture. And that's no offense to any rednecks here. I know we have a few that attend here. I'm just saying that's the environment that I worked in. It was just different. And the boss that we had then, the boss who hired me, he was new also. He had been there about a month or two. He was from upstate. I think he was in New York, somewhere in that area. He kind of had that personality. And so it was a different culture for him. He cussed like a sailor. I mean, you couldn't imagine. My mom is shocked by the words he says, and we know what a cusser she is. All right? Love you, Mom. But he did. And when I worked there, like, everybody cussed. Like, that wasn't this big deal. Like, everybody cussed in that place. But the thing was, when he cussed, he would use the Lord's name in vain. And for a bunch of Southern boys who had grown up in church, whose grandparents had taken them to church, whatever, like, you could not, that was crossing the line. You could do whatever else you want. You could say whatever you wanted, but you did not use the Lord's name in vain. And so it caused conflict, and it caused arguments. I mean, they kind of hated and despised him because of this, to the point that one day, kind of the number 2 guy in charge there, he was over scheduling the drivers and stuff. He had a conversation with the boss, and he said, hey, like, I really need you to try to stop saying those words. Because here's the thing, the guys, they don't like it and they hate you because of it, and it just makes them mad and it makes them more angry. And I remember, like, we're in this single wide trailer. They had the door open. My desk was just like on the other side of the wall. And I remember what he said, and it was something to this effect. It was something like, why should I care about what they think? These guys cuss. They smoke, they drink, not a one of them goes to church, half of them can't pass a drug test. So why should I care if they don't like what I say? And at this time, I'm in my mid-20s, and I'm as passionate about my faith as I've ever been in my life. I'm showing up to church every Sunday, reading my Bible every day, praying. When no one's at the office or anything, in between phone calls and stuff, I'm listening to sermons. And as he is saying this, like, I feel something happening within me, within my chest, of like, my heart begins to pound. And it's like, I'm going to have to say something. Like, I can't stay silent on this anymore. And so that's what I do. So I get up and I go over to his office, and I'm sure with my voice trembling, I said, you know what? I do go to church. And I don't use that language. And like, I try to follow Jesus, and I don't like you saying that either. And he just kind of looked at me, put his head back down. I just walked off. And you know what? He didn't change that day. He kept using that language occasionally. He would try to do better. When I was in the room and he would say it, he would kind of give me that look like, my bad, sorry about that. But I think he respected me because I'd said something to him about it. And he respected me because I was trying to live a life of a Christ follower. And I wanted to share that story with you this morning. I wanted to start off with that because over the last few weeks, we've been in this series all about like, how do I live out my faith when the culture around me is changing? And what we see oftentimes is as the culture changes, people's beliefs and their behaviors tend to change with it. And what happens is that as their beliefs and behaviors change and it makes us uncomfortable, confrontation tends to happen. Confrontation takes place, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, I know, confrontation, not the most exciting topic. I knew that when I was putting this together. I thought, this is not the most exciting. This is not going to be the most inspiring message today. It's just not. But it is going to be highly, highly practical about how you can have healthy confrontations. And for some of you in this room, I really believe this. I believe it is going to be one of the most important messages that you hear this year. All right, so let's get started. All right, how many of you have ever been confronted by someone in a bad way? Would you raise your hands if you've ever been confronted by someone in a bad way? Most of us, right? Most of us. If you haven't, you've been lucky. Now let's take it a step further. How many of you have ever been confronted by a Christian in what you would call an un-Christ-like way? Anybody? Yeah, still several of us. There may be some in this room, or maybe there's some watching online today that you would say, you know what? I don't consider myself a Christian, or I've been very hesitant to call myself a Christian because of how I've been treated by Christians in the past. Or maybe it's because like my friend told me a story of how they were treated by a Christian. And so if that's what Christianity is about and that's what church is about, then I don't want to be a part of it. And we have the stories. And I think that's why it's important that we talk about this, important about how we talk about what it looks like to have healthy confrontation. The other reason I think it's really important that we talk about this is because as we see this take place, as we see culture shift, as we see culture kind of moving away from God, it seems, away from the truth of the Bible and all those things, and everybody's making up their own truth, there are going to be people within our lives that we love and that we care about. And we're going to be faced with a decision of, do I confront them? Do I say something? Or do I just keep letting it happen? Do I keep letting them get further and further away from God? And so that's what we'll talk about today. We've been in the book of Daniel for the past few weeks, and Daniel is this great example of just this man who is basically taken from his culture, placed into a completely different culture, but still trying to live out his beliefs. And so that's where we're going to pick up today. We're going to be in Daniel chapter 4. And Daniel chapter 4 is interesting because it's actually written by King Nebuchadnezzar. Only chapter in the Bible that I know about that is ever written by a pagan king. Pretty crazy. And so we're going to see in this chapter where Daniel has to confront him. He's not confronting just anybody, not just a friend or family member or just an acquaintance or whatever, but like Daniel's having to confront the king. And so we'll pick up there in Daniel chapter 4 in verse 4. And it says, I, Nebuchadnezzar, it says, I was living in my palace in comfort and prosperity. He's saying, I had it good. Now, Nebuchadnezzar, from very young age, he has been a warrior. And he has been at war, and he's fought multiple battles, and he's the king of Babylon. And they have basically, at this point in his life, they have basically taken over everybody around them. Like, he is king of the world, basically, at this point. And so he says, finally, like, I've gotten to the age, I've taken care of everything. I was living in my palace. I'm in comfort and prosperity. But one night I have this dream, and this dream scares me, and this dream frightens me. And so I called in all these wise people I know, these astrologers and fortune tellers and Dionne Warwick and all these type people. Called them in. Old school reference. Some of y'all got that. All right. Young ones, no. They don't understand it. All right. But I called these people in and I said, here's my dream. Tell me what it meant. And he said, none of them could tell me what it meant. Now, I may be reading the room wrong, but some of you look pretty wise. And so I'm going to tell you the dream, and you see if you can figure out what you think it meant. So he says, here's the dream. He says, there was this tree in the middle of the earth, middle of the world, middle of the earth, right? And this tree, it ends up growing up big and strong and huge until it's at the point that it's basically providing shade for almost the entire world. It's providing food for almost the entire world. But then there was this messenger. This is all in the dream. But then there's this messenger of God who comes and says, you know what? He said, chop that tree down because the Most High God rules over the world. And he said, what could that possibly mean? Wisest people in the world couldn't figure it out. Obviously, it means, you know what? You have become too prideful. You have become too powerful. You have think of yourself too highly. You put yourself above God, and God is going to come and humble you. But no one wanted to tell him that, because if you were the bearer of bad news back then, a lot of times it was game over for you. That's where that whole kill the messenger, don't kill the messenger, that's where that whole statement came from, because used to, they killed the messenger. And so nobody wanted to tell him. And so he says, send for Daniel. And he sends for Daniel, and Daniel comes, and he tells him the same thing. But he has trust with Daniel. He has respect for Daniel, for admiration. Daniel has answered these dreams and these kind of things in the past for him. And he sends for Daniel, and he says, Daniel, here's my dream. Can you tell me what it means? And Daniel's kind of faced with this dilemma of like, okay, do I kind of do what everybody else did and just pretend like I can't figure it out? You know, it's what everybody else did. There's no shame in that. I can just do that. Or do I be honest and tell him, you know what? God's about to humble you. God's about to cut you down. But if I do that, I'm going to risk my relationship with the king. I'm going to risk my position within the kingdom. I'm going to risk my entire life. And sometimes that's the dilemma that we face with those that we love. I'm sure almost all of us, we have friends, we have family members, we have people that we are close to, that we know that they are living in a way that is contrary to what God would say. That is, they are going in the opposite direction, but do we confront them about it and risk our relationship with them and maybe push them further away from us? Or do we say something? Or do we not say anything and just let them continue moving further and further away from God and further from the consequences that they're having to deal with? That's the dilemma that we're faced with. So what I'm going to give you today is I'm going to give you kind of this like framework, it's kind of 4 pieces of what healthy confrontation should look like. Because if we can't have healthy confrontations, we're going to be in danger of pushing people further away from us and further away from God. So here's number 1. And this should be obvious, but it's not. But number 1, before you confront someone, you need to have a relationship with that person. You need to have a relationship with that person. You need to be friends. They need to know you. At this time in Daniel chapter 4, Daniel, I think he's like 45, 50 years old at that time. He's been in the king's service for 30 plus years. He started out as a teenager. And so him and the king, they've built this bond. There's this relationship. There's this trust that's been built. There's really a friendship that has been built here. It would be very rare for God to ever ask you to say, hey, go out and confront somebody that you don't have a relationship with. And if you ever try it, it does not go well. Just, hey, this is bad advice, but if you just want to try it, you go out and leave today and find a stranger and just call them out about something that they're doing, their behavior, right? It's not going to end well. And here's one of the reasons why. It's this great quote by Josh McDowell. He would say this. He would say, you know what? Rules without relationship leads to rebellion. And truth without relationship leads to rejection. Relationships are so important. Parents, if you don't know this already, you need to know this. Relationships are so important. And just because you're a parent, just because you're a mom and dad, doesn't mean necessarily that you have a relationship with your kids. It doesn't. Like, we have to be intentional about building those bonds, building those relationships, hanging out with our kids, doing things with them, getting to know them, even if they don't like hanging out with us, even if it's something that we don't like doing, even if it's hard to connect with them, because sometimes it is. But If we don't do it, and if we wait till they're teenagers and until they're starting to make some of these choices and have some of this freedom and doing their own thing, and then we try to confront them with their behavior and what they're doing, it's too late. It's too late. And so we need to ask ourselves, do I have a relationship with this person? Before I move on, one other sticking point here. Just because you're friends on Facebook does not mean you have a relationship with a person. All right? Relationships happen face to face. Face to face. There's nobody, I never heard a story of someone becoming a Christian because somebody called them out on Facebook and said, hey, here's why you're wrong, and here's what you should change your behavior. Here's that it was a stranger, right? It never works. We need to stop doing that. Same could be said about politics, right? No matter which side you're on, no matter whatever side, right, left, middle, doesn't matter. You're not going to convince the other side that you're right and they're wrong. All you're going to do is make yourself look bad. And you're making Christianity look bad when you call yourself a Christian and we act like that on Facebook. We need to stop it. Thank you. I'll take the 1 a.m. Amen. Thank you. In the back. Jot that down. Got one? All right. So before we confront somebody, do I have a relationship with them? All right. That's the first part. Number 2, the goal of any confrontation needs to be restoration. It needs to be restoration. It needs to be, I'm trying to restore this person back into the life, the God's will. I'm trying to restore this marriage. I'm trying to restore. Oftentimes what we see, I'm guilty of. I'm going to confess here. Oftentimes what we see is our goal of our confrontations is, I want to be right. And I'm going to prove that I'm right. I am so guilty of this in our marriage. I am, and my wife is amazing. I saw that shoulder tap over there. My wife is amazing. She was praying for me in the back during worship and stuff, and she is awesome, but she would be very honest and tell you that I stink when it comes to that. She hates having an argument with me because I'm terrible at this, because I'm looking to prove that I'm right. And so I'm going to get sources and stuff, and I'm saying, like, I talked to every guy at work, and they all agreed with me. They all said I was right. I don't know why you're being ridiculous. Like, I looked it up on Google. I've searched Google. 80% of people agree with me. I posted it to Facebook. I did a Facebook poll. They all said, you're being over the top about this. And when we do that, and when we act like that, I will tell you from personal experience, it doesn't work. And it doesn't matter how right you are. When you come at them with that approach, you're never going to win. It's never going to work out. We have to look about restoring the relationship. And so what are you looking to do? What's your goal? Am I looking to be right, or am I looking to restore the relationship? Here's how we can kind of know or get an idea, and it's through kind of how we approach it, how we treat them. In the book of Daniel, again, Daniel chapter 4, verse 19, it would say this basically. It says, Daniel said, "Oh, King Nebuchadnezzar, I wish this dream that this dream was about somebody else and not to you. I wish it was one of your enemies that this dream was about and not you." And now remember, this is what's crazy about this. Now remember, Nebuchadnezzar is responsible for taking Daniel from his homeland, stealing him away, and putting him into slavery for the kingdom. If I'm Daniel, I'm thinking, hey, you know what? Serves you right. I knew God was going to get you. I knew God was going to put you in your place. But Daniel really cares about the king. He really cares about the relationship. He cares more about the relationship with the king and the king's relationship with God. He's caring more about the restoration than he does about being right. And so our goal needs to be restoration. Third thing is this, is that we need to be humble in our approach. Need to be humble in our approach. And this can be really, really important, and it can be really, really dangerous for us, because oftentimes when we're confronting someone, we don't come with a humble spirit and a humble attitude. We come with I'm right. I don't know why you're being dumb. I don't know why you're being stupid. I don't know why you're making these mistakes. And we come at it from almost a prideful attitude. And here's the thing, when you're confronting someone, what you're really confronting in everyone is a sin issue called pride. The root of it is always pride. And so if we come to them with this pridefulness in our approach, and they're already prideful, it divides. It never works. It always falls apart. And so we got to be humble in our approach. The Apostle Paul, he would tell us, he would give us this great great advice as he's talking to the church in Galatia. And he would say this in Galatians 6:1. He would basically say, hey, if there's a church member, if there's someone in your church, he says, dear brothers and sisters, if there's someone in your church that has a sin issue and it just keeps going on and on, you who are godly should approach them gently and humbly. Gently and humbly, in hopes that we can restore them back into a right relationship with God. And so, are we doing that? Are we looking for that? We have to be humble in our approach. So, and here's how you can know whether you're doing that or not. And it's through this. If you're looking forward to confronting somebody, if you're like, I'm going to put them in their place, I'm going to show them it's about time, right? If you're looking forward to it, you're not ready. You shouldn't be confronting them. We have to be humble in our approach. Number 4, and this is the last one, and this is maybe the most important one, probably is the most important one, is that we always have to give them hope. In any confrontation, we have to give them hope. Daniel, in verse 26 and 27, he's explained the dream to the king, and he says, you know what? This is what it means. It means your kingdom's going to be taken from you. It means for 7 years, you're going to lose your mind and you're going to be walking amongst the fields as an animal. I mean, it's a real crazy story. But I want you to see what he ends with in verse 26. And he says, but you know what? As a part of that dream, but the stump and the roots of the tree, they were left in the ground. You know what that means? That means that you will receive your kingdom back again once you have learned that heaven rules. He says, King Nebuchadnezzar, please accept my advice. Stop sinning. Do what is right. Break from the wicked past. Be merciful to the poor. Perhaps then you will continue to prosper. He gives him hope. And that's what we have to do. That's what we have to do. And for the people that we may be confronting, they may have made some decisions and they may be leading a life that, is going to have some consequences and it's going to have some stuff that they're going to have to deal with. This was King Nebuchadnezzar. You know what? It doesn't go back perfectly. It doesn't go back, just like that. They got some stuff that they're going to deal with. There's some consequences to the decisions that you made. That is the case for every one of us. But there's always hope. There's always hope that, you know what? You're going to have to deal with this. You know what? You're going to have to deal with these consequences. But there's still hope that at the end of this, when you get through this, when you make it through on the other side, there is hope that you can be restored, that you can live, that you can prosper again. That's how we have to approach people. We have to give them hope. Hope is one of the most powerful emotions within people. If all we do is go up to somebody and tell them, here's why you're wrong, and we never give them hope, all we have done is humiliate them. All we have done is shame them, is embarrass them. We always have to give them hope. You know what? God can change it. Nothing is impossible for God. Have to give hope. And so let me just recap the 4 things real quick. Number 1, if we're going to approach somebody, confront somebody, we have to have a relationship with them. Needs to take place. Have to have a relationship with them. Our goal should be restoration. I'm not just looking to prove that I'm right, but hey, we're trying to restore their relationship back to God. I'm going to be humble in my approach. I'm going to approach them with humility, knowing that, you know what? I could be in the same shoes as you can. I could make those same exact mistakes. My mistakes may not look exactly like yours, but you know what? I got problems too, and I can mess up too. We approach with humility, and then we give them hope. And we give them hope that, you know what, this life can be better. God can change all of this. You know what, your marriage may be falling apart, and you may have to deal with some things, and you may have to go through some counseling, and you may have to do all this. But at the end of it, you know what, your marriage could be better than it ever has been before. There is hope there. And if we do all of those things right, we can hope that we'll have a story like the one they're about to show us. Check this video out.
About 10 years ago, I found out my brother was having an affair. I had a decision. I could either choose to let it happen, or I could choose to confront him. I don't like confrontation. I think the older I've gotten, I've learned that if you run away from it, it doesn't make it better, it makes it worse. And so I've really had to work on, let's deal with this. So I went to his house, his family left, and I wanted to make sure I had everything I needed to lay in front of him in a loving way. And that's when I led him with, you know, I love you, so I need you to hear my heart. And for me, it was uncomfortable. It was, man, I had anxiety, you know, just the thought of what could happen as a result of having this conversation. He knew how I felt about it. Like I didn't, and it wasn't that I was coming from a, dude, how dare you, and from a self-righteous, but it was definitely from an attitude of, do you know I love you, and you know you shouldn't be doing this. At the end of that conversation, it still didn't change. He had moved out, and he had decided he was going to be done. It was at that point where I'm like, Tim, just own this, say you've done it, and let's move on and go back to your family. So he finally got to that point of confession of like, okay, waving the white flag, and we started working through everything. And he started owning it. He moved back home, and in the process of that, there was a lot of heavy drinking that was used to mask a lot of guilt. And Tim, dude, you know I love you, so let's do this. Let's work on this. And so there were several times that picked him, and we just went to an AA meeting, found one, and we went.
The drinking was very heavy. That was the only way I could really cope with what I had done. I didn't think the guilt and the shame would ever go away. I felt very alone, very isolated. When he took time out of his schedule to go with me to AA meetings, it meant a lot. It really did. It helped me feel not so alone.
I saw value in being there with him, and once he started getting some traction, he's like, I need to be there. You started to see some of the change.
This past February, I got to celebrate 3 continuous years of sobriety.
He was now consistently going to our Surprise campus, and it was there where God started to do some amazing things in his heart. I remember he came to me and my dad, and he wanted us to baptize him. To be able to baptize your brother, who you've walked with some very difficult times, I will never, ever forget that moment.
One of the most proud moments that has come around since I was finally able to get sober and my marriage was restored was I got to baptize my oldest son. Not too long after that, my wife and I were talking, and she had never been baptized. And so she decided, she saw me get baptized, she saw our oldest son get baptized, she decided that she was going to get baptized. So since then, we were able to also baptize our youngest son and our daughter. So to do that as a family, for us to be involved in that, it's been incredible. It's one of the things I always remember for the rest of my life.
I have my brother back, and to see him leading his family in that, I could not be more proud of my brother.
I'm very grateful for my brother. I mean, I know that my marriage wouldn't be.
And that's our hope. Life change is always what we hope to see happen. And if we do it right, if we confront in a healthy way, if we confront in the right way, we can have hope that that's what can take place. I want to pray for us today. If you don't mind, if you would just where you are, if you would just bow your heads and close your eyes. And as I was speaking today, I just believe that there's probably some of you that had someone come to mind that you would say, you know what, this is a person that God's been dealing with me with that I need to have a conversation with. I've been putting this off for too long. I need to say something just out of love and just out of just a hope for them. If that's you today, I would love to pray for you. If you would just raise your hand and just acknowledge that, yeah, God's placed that person in my heart and that I need to have a conversation with. Thank you for those hands. Thank you for each and every one of those hands. And we're going to pray for those. And there's also, I'm sure, some here that, you know what, as you heard the message today and as you watch the video, that maybe you think to yourself, you know what, I'm the one that's dealing with this. I'm the one that needs to be confronted. I'm the one that's trying to live life on my own away from God. And I would just love to pray for you as well. Father God, thank you so much for your grace and for your mercy. Father, I can't say that enough. Lord, I know that none of us are close to perfect. Only your Son, Jesus Christ. And Lord, we all make mistakes, and we all at one time have ran away. And Lord, help us to know that we can always come back, that there is always hope, that no matter what happens in our lives, Father, Lord, you would always come running back to us. Always forgiveness, and there's grace, Father, Lord. Lord, I pray for those who know there's someone in their life, there's someone that they love, that, you know what, they need to have a tough conversation with. And Lord, I pray that you would give them the courage and the boldness. I pray that you would give them the humility that is needed. I pray that you would work on the heart of the person that's going to be confronted, Father, Lord, that you would break their heart, Father, that you would already be working in the midst of that. And Lord, we know nothing is impossible when you're in the midst of it. Lord, I love you, and I praise you, and I thank you for what you're doing within this church. Father, help us to never get in the way of it. It's in your name I pray. We're ready on that. All right. Hey, I want to say thank you so much for being here today. It is an absolute honor for me to get the opportunity to come and to share God's word with you. I want to invite you back tonight. We're going to pray that all this rain is going to go away. We're going to have some amazing food here as we have barbecue, hot chicken, and shaved ice for the kids. And so all that stuff's going to be going on tonight, 6 o'clock. Of course, look on Facebook. It was like 4 o'clock, and we'll try to update you. But make plans to come back. I hope y'all have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll see you soon.